welcome to Cable Street. It's a beautiful Dublin day. Cable Street is famous for sex shops, Asian restaurants. Was the birthplace of Sean Lemass, famous Irish political leader. The O'Neill's family, you know, the footballs.
A wee bit of GA clothing.
Yeah, down the road here. Early houses, markets. But I tell you what we're here for. We're going to go drink some Poitin.
Yes.
In 1661.
One of the best pubs in Ireland.
One of the best bars in the world.
Let's do it. Welcome to episode 6 of Poor Decisions. My name is Ronan Collins, or Whiskey for Breakfast.
And my name is Michael Cowman, or The Cowman Show.
And we are in the north side of Dublin.
We're very much in the north side of Dublin, my friend.
Yeah, I always got confused because, you know, when people are like, it's the north side of the river, I was like, yeah, but if you don't know
which side the river is.
Yeah.
I mean, north is the one that's closer to Belfast. You can think about it that way, I guess.
There we go.
Yeah, because I mean, you go east-west divides, we go north-south.
Yeah, because the north side, when we do talk about like, oh, let's meet here, and you're like, oh, couldn't be arse going to the south side. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like it.
Yeah, because I live on the north side. I have always lived on the north side when I lived in Dublin, and I would never live anywhere else in Dublin. Not anything against the south side, really. I mean,
it does sound like he has something against Southerners, and we agree on that. But the north side of Dublin, we do actually drink here quite a bit.
Yeah, and I guess the location we're in today is one of the main reasons we drink here quite a bit. But we are on the corner of, I think it's Little Britain and Green Street.
Yeah, it's just where they both join, yeah.
Yeah, and Capel Street, I guess, is the closest large street.
Yeah, so I think some people may have actually heard of Capel Street before, because last year, I think Lonely Planet, like the travel book, rated it as one of the best streets in the world, like in the world.
It's certainly a very interesting street. It has a lot of history. So, I mean, Capel Street is good for two things. Early houses and sex shops. I mean, that's the main things that are on Capel Street.
And I frequent 50% of those being the early houses, and that's how we have actually spent most of our time, or the other part of our time when we're not in this venue. We actually have drank in early houses quite a lot. But you've actually told me quite a few times when we are in them the kind of history and like the social kind of reasoning behind the early houses. Yeah,
so we're on Capel Street. Well, we're just off Capel Street at the moment. And Capel Street was surrounded. The north side of Dublin is very much the working class side of Dublin. It was the industrial side of Dublin, I guess, a little bit more. Just around the corners from us here, there's the fruit market. So this part of Dublin, they used to say, used to get up and used to go to bed before, you know, the rest of Dublin. So the fruit market would have been finished when everybody else would have been only starting their day. So people used to go into the likes of a Slattery's and go to the early house, essentially. So they used to have a license to open from 7 a.m. Some pubs around the city still have that license. Slattery's have gone a bit soft. I think they open at 9 now.
Oh,
yeah.
But useless.
It is a very funny place to go into. You know, so we usually go in once every Christmas. Usually start off a little day, jaunt around Dublin.
Seshmas.
Yeah, Seshmas. But the go in 9 a.m. So there is an interesting mix of people you'll generally get in Slattery's at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday morning.
Yeah, and like historically, that's probably changed slightly. You would have found just anybody and everybody in there. And even when you look at the street today, it is a mixing pot of people now from all over the world.
Yeah, it is a melting pot. Some of the best Asian restaurants in Dublin are located on the street, for example. I mean, it's where Ireland's first sex shop opened in 1992, a guy called Jim Bellamy, who was a Scot, wouldn't you know, came over and
at it again.
And it was funny that he sent people up to O'Connell Street to hand out flyers to say the shop was open, and they were instructed not to give them to under 18s, not to give them to the priests or the nuns. Now, to be fair,
did they not want to make money?
Yeah. And so Capel Street is known. I saw a great quote about Capel Street, that it's probably the only place in Dublin where you can get a chandelier, a strap-on, knitting needles, and some dim sum within a 10-meter radius.
Jesus, I'd struggle to find those dim sum, I reckon. But yeah, it is actually an amazing street when you look around. And then this cocktail bar really is the crown jewel. But for anyone who maybe isn't from Ireland or Dublin, and you know they read about what a great bar this is, and they come to try it out, they might be shocked to see this isn't like a Shoreditch or a Williamsburg in like New York and London. Like it hasn't been gentrified.
No, I would say it's certainly becoming more, I would say, bohemian. Maybe. You know, it's becoming a much more busy part of the city. It's become a little bit more touristy. They've recently pedestrianised the street here. So you tend to see a little bit more foot traffic. But it is definitely still very much a Dublin, you know, a part of Dublin City. In the same way as when we were in the Liberties, when we were in Fallon's. Fallon's is still very much, or the Liberties is still very much Dublin.
Yeah.
It hasn't quite have the sheen of the Google, Facebook.
Venture
website.
capitalists.
Yeah,
Vulture funds, yeah. This one is almost the direct contrast. Needles and you know, it's still quite a really lived-in side of the town.
And there's a lot of history. There is a lot of history. So across the road here, where 1661 is, there was an old prison here. We're actually surrounded by a lot of old courts, old prisons, all that kind of jazz. And there's a really interesting gate you were telling me about earlier. Yeah,
because you can actually see it from this window, and it's just that there's stone arch, and that was actually the last place. So essentially, if you were sentenced in one of the many courts around here, and you were sentenced to go to prison in Australia, which you would have jumped on the boat and you would have
Van Diemen's Land, as it was.
Yeah, it would not have been a fun trip, let alone like a sentence. But the last taste of freedom they had was like going through that stone archway before the window.
That's fairly grim.
I know, but then the flip of that is that sounds grim, but there's actually tunnels underneath this whole area from all the courts. And in the executioner's court, there was a public executioner's court over there. And if you were convicted, you never seen the light of day again. You just went down into the tunnels until your execution.
Again, fairly grim.
Yeah, so no wonder there's a bar here.
Yeah, and there's a few bars around. I mean, there's some really, really famous bars. Slattery's we've mentioned. The Hacienda is one of those really unique bars. So it's down beside the fruit market, and the Hacienda, as the name suggests, it's like someone took a little Spanish villa and just stuck it into the north side of Dublin. It's reputed to be Matthew McConaughey's favorite pub in the world.
I've heard that.
And there's some stories around that which we won't share with you now.
Well, he just goes up and goes, all right. You know, never lets him in, no?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Okay.
But
that's what he says.
But yeah, you actually have to knock. Sorry, Dan. Dan gets annoyed when I knock on the table.
You've been doing it all episode.
But you have to knock on the door and he'll have a look at the security camera and either let you in or not let you in.
But you were saying it was actually, we have spoken about this before, I've actually never been in.
No, and it used to be called Corbett's, and it was an early house for the people from, again, another early house, for the people from the market, and it was one of the only ones that served women, because obviously there was a lot of women working in there as well, and they need a drink too.
Happy days. Well, speaking of drinks and fantastic places, we are, of course, in 1661, if you haven't guessed, one of the best cocktail bars in Ireland, nay, the world. And we do drink here quite a lot. It is one of our favourite places for pints, poaching, cocktails.
Big Sexy Dave.
Big Sexy Dave.
One of our friends actually refers to him constantly as Big Sexy Dave. I don't know that he knows that, but you know.
Well, we'll tell him now, because thankfully his honey, gravelly voice is going to join us to tell us all things 1661.
Yeah, let's get him in.
Come on, Dave. Big Sexy Dave, welcome.
Well,
what's the crack?
I've made it now.
This is really the high point of your
This
career.
is the pinnacle 40 years in.
Yeah.
So thanks for coming to the show. Thanks for having us in your bar.
Anytime.
I mean,
You're here all the time. To be fair.
We are.
We always like to start off with, the important questions. So I mean, poaching, it's illegal, it's expensive, no one cares. Why would you bother?
You summed it up. No, Sheldon. Was there a question in that? Or was it just a
general
bold statement? Yeah.
So, just to jump in. What have we got here?
Belfast coffees, drink du jour, soup du jour in 1661. Yeah.
Yeah, this is like the signature drink of this bar, isn't it?
It's a signature drink of this bar. It's a signature drink of my brand. It's probably my signature drink, obviously. But I think it's quickly becoming Poitin's signature drink. So we've a lot of the other distilleries using it as well. And it was something Poitin always lacked, was that kind of how to drink it moment, and given that it's just a cold brewed Poitin Irish coffee, it's easy to understand, it's easy to explain, easy to drink, and easy to replicate.
And removes the fear, I guess, for people, because genuinely, I was joking, but one of the things around is people are like, you know, it's illegal.
Oh, it'll
It's,
blow
you know,
your
it's
head
it's
off, or-
100%, like, and it removes the bit of the fear and allows people to taste it in the same way as an Irish coffee kind of demystifies the Irish whiskey to a certain extent, and this does the same thing.
Exactly, but we you know, Irish whiskey, yeah, it's having a resurgence for sure, but the Irish coffee is a big part of that driver globally, especially in like the cocktail world. And you saw the resurgence, you know, it was coming out of New York and London before it started getting trendy again over here. Like, so that's our signature cocktail, and Poitin needed that same thing, you know.
So we have a little sip.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Sláinte, lads.
Sláinte.
You're very welcome.
Thanks for having us. Yeah, here it looks great. It's like such a beautiful, like dark brown with that silky cream, as you can see on Mihal's moustache there.
It is a great drink. But the problem with them is
Oh, is that we
finish
bit
them in about 3 sips? Like,
Yeah,
they're just gone. They're
It's
so,
a 6 or 7 minute cocktail.
With
yeah,
a wee
it
bit of
is.
nutmeg on top as well. Fun fact about nutmeg:
Go on.
it's not a nut; it's a seed.
I don't know if I need it to know that.
It's a seed, it is.
a
Yeah,
seed.
because it has this. What's the other bit of it? The leaf called again? Come on, you'll think of it. There's another name for it.
Leaf.
No.
Wasn't this the Dutch used to stop people taking it out of the East Indies and whatever because it was so expensive.
Yeah.
But yeah, there we go. That's a wee quiz question for you there.
Go on, Dave. Tell us about you. Tell
Well,
us
no,
about Dave.
I want to know more about the Belfast coffee because we're in Dublin. You aren't from Belfast yourself. Like,
True.
where did the name the Belfast coffee even come
Wasn't
from?
Inspired by Ronan.
It wasn't inspired by Ronan. The first thing out of the north it wasn't. But the name came. This drink actually was. We were doing it for another company, you know, who wanted to work with Bawn. We were doing it for a coffee chain in London who were putting alcohol offerings in to their bars. So they gave us all their cold brew and stuff like that to mess around with. And I'd been looking for that signature serve for years, you know, and never cracked it. And it was my mate Lucas started messing with the cold brew, and there it was in front of us the whole time. And then I stirred it over ice. We originally called it the. That sounds like I did a lot there. Really basic cocktail stuff. But we originally called it, I think it was the Northern Irish coffee first, and it was the Poitin Irish coffee, and it just didn't react, you know. And then I really believed in the drink, and we changed the name to the Belfast coffee, and then it just took off, you know. And I guess a lot was to do with this bar, but it was already working for Bawn, for the brand before. But it was that name change that kind of sparked interest. And I guess Poitin, you know, it's a bit rock and roll. It has a lot of negative connotations. Not saying Belfast does anymore. I love Belfast, and our Poitin's made in Ecklinville, right outside Belfast. But yeah, it has the same grit in its teeth, should we say?
Yeah,
that
that's
Poitin might have. You know?
That's it. Yeah, like the kind of fighting underdog
Yeah.
sort of. I like that rock and roll gritty sort of side, and which Belfast as a city
Exactly,
is. You know.
To be fair, the Lurgan coffee or the Newry coffee doesn't really have
Doesn't quite do it. And same as like the Dublin coffee or the Connemara coffee. It's all a bit too twee, you know. It's
Yeah.
a bit tiddly-eye. And
that's
there's a lot of places in Ireland that nobody knows. Like Belfast is, you know, internationally, they're not going to know it. So Connemara is not going to be a globally known place. But Belfast, a capital city with all its history, people know it.
And I think without getting into it, ordering a Northern Irish coffee, I know at least 50% of people won't order that up north. So
I went to north of Ireland.
yeah,
I'm not touching it.
it's a bloody fantastic drink. I actually, the last time I had it was with you in New York because you've been bringing you and your team obviously have been bringing 1661 International.
Yeah. We've been doing our best. All right. That was in the Dead Rabbit pop-up,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Are you asking me about that? Was that a lead?
Yeah, that was a lead in, yeah. Sorry, this is...
Take the cue.
Yeah. Wow, it's Dave's first time on camera being interviewed. I know he's a bit starstruck.
There's meant to be questions there. That's it. I'm starstruck. I'm in my favourite sandwich here.
Just lead you down the path and
Lead
let
you
you
down.
and let you kind of.
I would have had a menu here. I would have done the whole thing. Photography. No.
They won't care.
We all know who the Dead Rabbit is. Everyone watching the podcast,
Yeah.
listening to the podcast, everyone knows what it is. I've been, I suppose, like everybody else, especially Irish bartenders, watching them with a magnifying glass since they launched that project. You know, I knew who they were up in when they were doing everything in the Merchant, obviously up north. But yeah, when they launched that, I mean, they just changed the game globally, not just for Irish bars, for cocktail bars. You know, really what you can be and how you can transcend your four walls and, you know, becoming brandification of bars.
they're
you know.
their marketing for a bar was like no one had ever done.
Next
Probably
level.
TGI Fridays were the last brand to ever do that sort of thing.
And they'd only one site downtown New York. It's not even in a good location.
No.
It is now, but like that's not the first location you go. But I mean, credit to them. They just, like I said, changed the game for all of us. So super proud of them and watching all the successes. And then when they came to us, you know, and asked us to come over, Jack was over here. I mean, we were jumping at it. We were never saying no to that. And then we only found out after we'd agreed. They said they wanted, you know, it was the 10-year anniversary. So they were bringing the best of Irish. They were bringing a bit of music. They were bringing comedy. They were bringing art. And they wanted to bring drinks, obviously, because that's their bread and butter. And they thought we were at a standard that they wanted to promote, which was, again, great for the whole team. Great for all of us. But, yeah, they said they wanted to give it to us for 4 nights. And then we agreed. But we only found out afterwards that they'd never actually given the parlour to anybody for a takeover. In 10 years, nobody had been allowed to take it over. So amazing, you know, vote of confidence for us. And they were here twice. Once they did a takeover with us. Once was just a kind of, you know, a visit before we'd agreed it. They wanted to try the drinks, see the service. And he was like, yeah, this is exactly what we're looking for. So 5 of us went over. We were there for 8 days for 4 nights work. So again, amazing opportunity for all of us, for the team, like for the bartenders, you know, getting to go to New York for 8 days and hang out in what is the most famous cocktail bar in the world.
Yeah.
Seeing everything they do, seeing every level back of house, seeing how they operate. It, you know, it was a big eye opener for me as well. And they've just built a machine over there. So
it is crazy. And like I as Irish drinks and hospitality people, we actually do love what they have done. But seeing what you guys were doing over there wasn't an empty seat there.
Yeah.
You know, you absolutely nailed it. And it was, you know, it was quite nice to see someone from home going over there and just showcasing that, yes, the Dead Rabbit are like the global superstars that we all know they are, but you guys like smashed at their level.
Yeah, and like there's loads of great stuff happening in Ireland. You know, North and South. There's loads of great cocktail bars, and there has been for a long time. Just nobody's had the opportunity to make the impact.
Yeah.
So again, fair play to the Rabbit for giving us that opportunity, because all eyes are still on them, no matter where they go.
You're being very modest here, Dave, because I think myself and Ronan have discussed this, and I think we might have mentioned this briefly on the podcast before, that Ireland hasn't got a huge amount of recognition in terms of awards and, you know, global lists and that kind of thing. And we think if anyone's going to do it, it's probably going to be you guys here in 1661.
That's very kind of you.
Yeah, no, look, I have to say we're here. But no, seriously. But like, tell us a little bit about I guess about the concept of what the bar is.
Yeah, I mean, this bar was, I guess it was, if you want something done right, you got to do it yourself. That was my ethos at the time. I'd been doing Poitin maybe 5 or 6 years in London. I had a bar over there, you know. I had Shabeen up in North London, Kentish Town, where you lived, Ro. That was meant to be a year-long kind of pop-up. We knew it was a short-term lease, but we got 3 years out of it. Kind of introduced London to Poitin, got us set in our way. But I started Bawn then after maybe a year and a half. I just loved the category. I loved the spirit, and I feel like the story was too good and it needed to be told. Nobody was telling it, you know. Nobody was focused on it. So I wanted to do that. A lot of help around me, obviously, and a lot of great mentors and friends who were in the industry to advise me, because I was just a bartender, to know what I was doing. But yeah, we had all these great successes in London, and you know, it's polarizing. Some people like it, some people love it, some people it's not for them. Fine, it's that kind of spirit. But we were getting listings in some of the top cocktail bars in London, which meant the world at the time, you know. And I'd be coming home to London back to Dublin every 5-6 weeks. I couldn't give it away. I couldn't give it to any Tom, Dick, nor Harry's on the green. You know what I mean? It was like
there was an inbuilt perception, I suppose, was there?
Yeah, perception. We got caught with that gin bubble as well, to be fair. Like, gin was having a moment, so you were trying to fight what was a consumer-led thing. You know, that's what the customer was looking for, was gin. So the bartenders were like, nobody cares, nobody's asking for that. They didn't maybe share my excitement in it. But it was the old Berlin, you know. My good friend Stephen had, I'm not supposed to say his name, he doesn't want his name anywhere near. So he had a space in the basement. They'd just taken that space, and he was showing me the build. And when I went back to London, it kind of reminded me of Shabeen. So I said, can I do a pop-up? We did a 6-week pop-up, and it was that pop-up that you know, was so successful. Not just financially, that wasn't what we were looking for. It was the hype. It was the press, the PR. Totally. It was TV, radio, broadsheets, all over the socials.
And it was also during the Whiskey Show or Whiskey Live as well? Because I remember I was over and it was like, to get into you was like a queue down the road as well.
Exactly. Yeah, it was something like we launched the day of we launched the day of Whiskey Live and we closed the day of the Irish Whiskey Awards, which I guess are the two biggest dates in the Irish whiskey calendar. And that was a bit of a fuck you from Poitin, you know, and just like, we're going to steal your dates and try to steal your thunder. Because I think as a spirit, it needs to be that disruptor and anti the rest and, you know, pave its own path in life.
A little bit more rock and roll.
A little bit more rock and roll, you know, and we're in a basement off Dame Street, you know, a big party going on upstairs. It was great. It was brilliant. But I went traveling briefly afterwards. I had a lot of time to think and I was like, oh shit, I think I need to move home, you know. I think I need to go home and open that bar permanently. And then teamed up, you know, John, who's one of the partners here. He is Mamar Chair Poitin. He was watching it from afar. He was just in straight away. And then we brought some other people in as well. And yeah, we just wanted to make, like, I guess the concept was, I said, this needs to be the number one cocktail bar in Dublin, if not Ireland. Like, that was always an aspiration. We'd never cocktail bar, you know. We wanted to be the best cocktail bar in the country because if this bar failed, it would mean Poitin failed. If this bar didn't represent properly, how are we going to tell anybody else how to do it? So that was always our goal, you know, and it wasn't about winning awards. It wasn't about any of that. It was about Poitin and getting it out there and giving it the platform that I thought it deserved. So yeah, everything we do here, 1661, obviously the year they banned it. I mean, it used to be half the menu is Poitin. Now it's probably like a third. But that's just as we've grown up as well, and we're starting to use it in other ways where it's not always the base spirit. Sometimes it's used for homemade ingredients, modifiers, whatever, you know. So, yeah, who knows what the next menu will bring. It'll probably go up again. But yeah, this whole thing is, it's not about my brand, it's not about John's brand, it's about everybody's brand, it's about the category, and yeah, just shining a big old spotlight, which we have there.
Yeah. Which you definitely see in 1661. And for anyone who hasn't been here or can't see it, don't let the idea of it just being a Poitin bar scare you off. It's a beautiful, stunning venue with like bespoke tables, chairs, great artwork. Like it is, if the label a Poitin bar wasn't on it, you would just think it's one of the best, most beautifully designed bars around.
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite things about here is, you know, aside from the Poitin bar element, is the selection of spirits you have behind the bar. And I think we've discussed this before in terms of mezcal, tequilas, the amount of Scotch whiskey, the amount of Irish whiskey, and it's a bar. You know, I think we get so used in Ireland to going into a bar and looking at the background. It's like, yeah, that looks like everybody else. Whereas you guys have everything, like, you know. Yeah, we have that. Like, that's, I guess, my ethos, always how it worked. We got to think of the guest coming in, you know, and I try to stay away from all brand deals and stuff like that. Like, we work with a lot of brands on projects and on events and stuff like that, but when it comes to back bar menu listings, like, we've got to create everything we want to create, and if there's a conversation to be had after, we'll have it after, but we never let a third party company dictate what we sell, what we offer. You know, there's nothing here is paid for, and that is really, really rare in this day. What's your tagline? Staunchly Irish and fiercely independent. Yeah, I had that wrong earlier.
And that was off camera. That fiercely independent, for those who maybe don't necessarily know that side of a bar, a lot for their own calls. Like, it's each to their own, but a lot of bar deals and cocktail deals are done with big brand contracts before like the menu's written or the wells are even talked about. And it is actually quite rare for someone in a position like yourself to not take the deal up front, because it offers capital, it pays wages ahead of time and stuff like that. So, to kind of really put your foot to the ground, be like, we make what we make the best. After that, come and talk to us if you want. I think that there's really admirable, and it genuinely is class to see.
Yeah, well, it allows us to be who we are. There's no good us putting fiercely independent on the cover of our menu if we're taking brand deals left, right, and centre. You know, because you're not doing what you say you did. So from day one, it was like, look, half of what we're selling here is Poitin, you know. None of the big guys make Poitin. None of these guys offering these big deals make Poitin. And I have no problem working with them, you know, and some of them have some of the best brands in the country, it has to be said. But I guess in our market, we own some seriously heavy-hitting global brands are made in Ireland, like Guinness, like Jameson, like Bailey's even, you know. So we might have a skewed workforce in the country, you know, that maybe for a small market there's a bit more budget flying around than there might be. So yeah, it's hard to say no, but really for this bar, this is not that bar, this is not the project. We had to stick to our guns, we had to do what we wanted to do and just remain independent.
And the whole industry has responded in force with you. Like, you are probably the most talked about person in the drinks industry after me.
You knew it was coming.
That's the only reason he was saying it, setting himself up.
That's the only reason I came here today. Mick has his favourite question he likes to ask people. This is pretty much us just wrapping up because we know your time is precious. So
Very precious. He was busy. No, we do a thing with every bar owner. Room 101. All right. So you might be familiar with the old 80s BBC show. You put something in a room, it disappears, it never comes back.
I think that's still on.
Is it?
Yeah, it is. Frank Skinner. Yeah. I don't think it was.
So we've stolen that idea. So we've stolen that and we're applying it to the world of drinks. So I mean, what Johnny Barron down in Stein Ground was people who steal your glasses, I think it was. One of the lads in Macara was vapes.
Yeah, disposable vapes. Hated them.
So in the world of drinks, one thing that you would get rid of.
I mean, I'm not going to comment on the customers. That's fine. If they could stop stealing our shit, would be amazing. I love doing that. We've had doorstops robbed in here multiple times.
Sorry,
they're nice doorstops.
When you mention that, it's the only place I've ever seen with the old Middleton very rare box as a doorstop, and it does get robbed.
And they get robbed as well, yeah. But that happens, drink involved. But for me, in the drinks industry right now, is celebrity spirits all day. I just hate it. They're coming so thick and fast. They're coming every week, and some of them kind of make sense where you're like, all right, that's a cool person, cool ambassador and stuff. I see where they did the partnership. We've got Harry Potter stars bringing out gins and there's, these really polished Hollywood stars are like, I never shared my love for tequila before, but the category's on fire. So now, the Kardashians bringing out tequila. I'm like, why does anybody care? Why do these exist? They just don't relate to what they're selling, but that celebrity power. And again, it was cool for a while, but now there is one a week, a new celebrity coming out, and you know what it's about. It's about money and nothing else.
I do wish the Kardashians, I think they have Armenian heritage. I wish they brought out an Armenian brand. At least that's true to their heritage.
Something real random.
Yeah, and everybody goes, all right, Armenian brandy.
Exactly. There you go. Yeah. But bringing out a tequila that you've always loved but forgot to tell anyone and you don't really drink. And
Yeah, I think that's it.
So that'd be my one.
That's a great one.
You don't have any in here then? Could you categorically say you don't
I
have
have
any
one that will remain unmentioned.
Yeah,
But we charge a lot of money for it. We purposely charge about 4 times what it's worth, just in case that person ever comes in.
Fair enough.
Buys the bar around, yeah.
Well, Dave, thank you so much for your time today, and thanks for the Belfast coffee as well.
This was the honour. No, nice one, lads. Yeah.
We might ask you to do us a favour. So we're talking about poitin, so we're going to go on to have a little chat about poitin. You might throw us up 2 poitins that you think we should taste.
Yeah.
2 neat poitins. So let's see what you pick.
Absolutely, yeah.
Deadly.
Any 2 randoms?
Yeah.
Sure. My pleasure.
Deadly. Thanks,
Nice
man.
one.
Thanks, Dave.
Cheers, Dave.
Give him his proper title, please.
Cheers, big sexy Dave. I must admit, it did feel like Dave was trying to steal our thunder a bit.
Yeah, but he needs to realise this is our show.
Yeah, and we're just going to edit out his best bits. He did drop 2 pochins here, which is great because, we do drink a lot of pochin compared to the average bear, I would say. But there is a lot of mystery around this brand, or this category.
Misconception and mystery, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. We all know the top one, it's illegal.
I was recently, I told you I was recently at a show, and Poitin from Mickle, and he was up giving a talk in front of 300 or 400 people, and the moderator was like, "So you have your own poitin distillery?" And he was like, "Yeah," and she's like, "And it's legal, is it?" And he was like, "Yeah, it's legal. Yeah, I wouldn't be here at Bloom Festival with my own stand if I didn't have a legal distillery."
Because it's even those questions that in general, when I'm doing spirits talks, and even that example, that if it was illegal, or if those producers were standing up there illegally distilling, the tax and the laws that they would be breaking will be, they would end up in jail with some of the biggest fines.
Yeah, and remember, you can't get away from the taxman.
No.
You can get away from a lot of things in life, and a lot of people, but the taxman will always find you.
Yeah, what are the 2 things in life that are certain?
Taxes and Ronan getting blackout drunk.
Taxes and death. That's what I was saying. So before we go into the history of it, let's try some poching. So the one that on your right-hand side that we're going to try first is Ban poching. So this is the one, the flagship of 1661.
So this is Dave's actual brand.
Dave's actual brand, yeah. It's distilled up in Ecklinville and Strangford Lough.
Very cool.
delicious poitin. It's made from malt, some potato in there, and sugar beet as well.
So it doesn't just have to be potatoes.
No, it doesn't. No. So to be a poitin, it's kind of like a starchy carbohydrate, very much like a lot of spirits will start out. So you can also use molasses, but typically that malted barley is the classic one. I know we always hear like poitin's made from potatoes. It's really not, as you would know, to distill like I think people think that would just be potatoes dropped in and then distilled. That would create a mashy potato, which would be incredibly difficult to get alcohol out of, as the yield would be terrible. But maybe some potato skins would have been used. But typically malt, sugar beets, whey can even be used as well.
And that's the thing. The interesting thing about, I suppose, clear spirits like poitin is every country almost has their own version, and it was generally an agricultural product made by farmers to basically, if the product was going off, you just distill it down and you get a product, or you get some alcohol out of it.
Yeah.
You store it essentially.
I think some people actually did call poitin like farmer's vodka. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But so that there's what Dave's is. So this is, I think, a very classic style. I think Dave brought this out in 2013, changed the bottle in 2015, which, it probably seems quite recent, but in terms of commercial poitin, that is so ahead of the curve.
Because it was illegal at one point.
It was, yeah. So I suppose it was made, so distilling in Ireland in 1661. Hence the name of the bar, became illegal without a license in 1661. So, you had to pay it to the crown to distill. So by nature, the people who are making poitin, like you said, it's an agricultural process. So they were just like, no. The bigger whiskey distilleries did pay because it was easier. They were making loads of money. So the poitin distillers, I suppose, didn't. And then as that time passed on, I think it was 1780. So nearly 100 years after it, the King Charles at the time brought in a specific law and tax on poitin, as in poitin distillers have to pay this tax.
Because they realized how much money they were losing.
Yeah, exactly. So they were like, I just assumed that a conversation was had that they were like, maybe they don't think that they have to pay this because it's not whiskey. So they brought this in just for poitin, and within a couple of years of that, they realized that they still weren't paying, and then made poitin as a category illegal.
I do remember seeing a stat from that kind of region, that neck of the woods in terms of time. And I think it was in England, there was maybe 300 illegal stills shut down. In Scotland, there was about 800. In Ireland, there was about 8,000. So we were, I think, quite a bit ahead of the game. And poitin is a part of Irish history a lot more than it would be, you don't really hear it mentioned in Scotland, whereas they would have obviously been producing a similar spirit, but it just doesn't have the same notoriety, or they don't really talk about it in Scotland the way we do.
Yeah, no, definitely not. And I think it was at Donegal and specifically then Connemara and Galway, which were the two epicenters for, of course,
furthest away from the Pale, from the Crown. Of course, they're going to be the epicenters.
Yeah, and they're still rogue. But yeah, let's give Dave's a wee taste here.
44.5%, I think it is, ABV.
Yeah. Really crisp and clean on the nose, slightly malty in there as well.
It's lovely. And this is, if you get a Belfast coffee in here, this is what it's made with.
Yeah, and you can almost get that. You understand why this goes really well with
it's clean
the
and it's crisp.
And now, I suppose then to flash forward, when did poitin become legal? Poitin became legal in 1987, but that was only for export. So you could make Irish poitin
and sell it abroad.
But we weren't allowed to drink it, and it wasn't allowed to be sold in Ireland. That didn't come until 1997.
Another bizarre quirk of Irish licensing laws.
Yeah, so strange. And then the European Union. So Irish poitin, specifically the term Irish poitin got its GI from the European Union in 2005.
Okay.
It might be 2005, 2007.
That neck of the woods.
Around that time. And I think I've heard a story, somebody talking about it, that it kind of, because poitin had such a colourful past, we missed, as in Ireland, to kind of get the GI on the term poitin itself. So poitin now the term can be made in other places. So whereas it actually is the Irish poaching, which is slightly a wee bit of a shame because true poaching is Irish.
I mean, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, I suppose, isn't it? But yeah, so it is amazing that, it was legal for export, but not legal to sell here.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's still, as a category, is still very much a growing category. It's a thing that, hasn't really captured the imagination in the same way as whiskey has, because I think we have a job to do in education on whiskey, and we definitely have a job to do in education when it comes to poaching, I guess.
Yeah, and a lot of people, like Dave was once upon a time, in my opinion, the solo person leading the charge. But now you've got so many distilleries with their own poaching out there. People are genuinely talking about this craft poaching renaissance. Brenton and Cologne, who's obviously he's got the Irish whiskey industry by the ear when it comes to whiskey. So him using that platform for poaching is brilliant. And then even in 1661 last year, we obviously went to the Poaching Now Festival.
Which again is happening this year, I think in November as well this year, I think.
Yeah, and like Francis, I think, didn't he have, how many poachings did he have lined up that day?
Oh, I think 40 odd,
I think it was every single commercial poaching that was ever available.
Because other poachings are available.
Yeah, so even though poaching is now legal to make as of 1997, if you do not pay tax on spirit that you're distilling, whatever that spirit is, it's illegal.
Taxman will get you.
Or
he won't.
And I think, I know we have spoken to people about, there is still poaching distillers in Ireland who do it illegally, and you need to know someone and a wee wink and a nod to get something. But they're slightly dying off because cost of goods, glassware, the barley itself, even the fuel is actually going up. So where once upon a time where you wouldn't have to pay that tax, so you're getting a cheaper product.
Yeah.
Sometimes a really well made, cheaper product. So it might be a couple of pounds or a couple of euro for a bottle. Now it's creeping up because of the cost of goods. So it's actually...
You're only doing it for the tradition and the folk memory rather than actually being any way cheaper.
Yeah, which is a bit of a shame.
And, not me, but I've heard of people paying, €15 for a bottle of, 700ml wine bottle, comes with a nondescript label that just says poaching.
Yeah.
I know of somebody who was given a bottle and they asked, "Where's this from?" They said, "A border county," and it was just left at that.
Yeah. And I also know somebody, wink, wink, who's at this table, who gifted me a bottle. It was a Campo Viejo bottle of wine, and on it just said poaching. And that person said, "It is just poaching."
Don't know who that might be. Anyway, moving swiftly onwards.
Yeah.
So our second poaching, or poitin, as some of the boys out west might say.
Yeah, because that there is actually a genuine question for those who do start to get into poaching. They're like, how do I know which one's the right one? Because there's a couple of different spellings of it. And the term poaching in Asgaeilge in Irish just means little pot, because it was once upon a time distilled in just a little small pot.
Yeah.
But therefore, it's been translated poaching. There's
Poitin,
yeah. Still water of life, holy water, some people call it as well.
And there's kind of a last thing. There's like a rule around how long you can rest it or age it, or
Yeah, so I suppose like all raw ingredients all spirits that start off with a very similar raw ingredient base, let's say malted barley, after a while it can all kind of become something similar. So yeah, you're only allowed to rest poaching for up to 10 weeks maximum. Then after that, it's no longer called poaching. I think it's just called a rested spirit.
Okay.
Which no one wants to buy that.
No, it doesn't sound as sexy.
No.
So the crater.
Yes. So this is the crater, the best thing in nature.
For sinking your sorrows and raising your joys, is that it?
You're right. That's a great tune. Yeah. So this is from the hills of Donegal.
Yeah. So Buckley Distillery.
Yeah, Buckley Distillery. What Buckley means?
Danger, I think.
Danger, yeah, class.
So Buckley, I think, is one of the smallest distilleries in Ireland. And this is a real cracker of a spirit. I've had this before. Dave gave this out to us. This is a real cracker of a spirit. 60.9% ABV. So it is a high ABV.
Well, it says right there, we're just looking at it, says small pot, obviously poaching, small pot, big flavour.
Yeah, I think they only do about a half a cask a week. Oh. Do you know what this reminds me of? Bacon fries.
It does. I'm glad you said it. It exactly smells like bacon fries, doesn't it? It's like meaty and fatty. There's like a lot going on in that nose. I don't exactly know how they distill. I haven't been up to them, but Smelling the spirit alone makes me want to just check that out.
And this is the thing, right? When you've smaller pots, you have more reflux. You can have a lot more reflux sometimes in the stills. Maybe some direct fire stills. That's going to create a little bit of a different kind of a flavor within the distillate as well.
And then as a mash goes, Ban had that potato, that sugar beet, and barley. This is just peated malted barley, and it's double distilled. So very different like styles of poaching here.
And this is a particular favorite among some friends of ours.
Yeah, oh yeah. This is a mad story, actually.
So
you know who you are.
You know who you are, and I hope you're watching. Because there's a few hundred bottles of this, maybe, I think.
Yeah, because they make it in such small batches, and like genuinely, this isn't like a marketing small batch. This is a how much can we fit in?
Yeah, and it's like, right, once this is done, probably can't recreate it in that particular way again.
No one will want it anyway, sort of thing.
But there was, I think, a friend of ours was like, oh, this is the best thing I've ever tasted. And he sent Mick, who owns the distillery, he sent him a message and said, how many have you left? He said, 22. He goes, I'll buy the lot. So I think he spent the bones of $2,000.
Yeah, well, he put into the WhatsApp group like his receipt, so he legit did do it.
Yeah. And I actually gave him a tip for a racehorse a week later, and he goes, "I'll send you a bottle of Crater." You know, he was like,
Class.
the wife is asking me why I have so many.
But it is really delicious. There is another like way that modern poaching is coming out. Obviously, we have like crisp and clean with a wee bit of malty note. We have like big, robust.
Which is and both these ways would have been made in the past. I guess.
Yeah. So actually, So neither would be considered like a new way, and it just would have been, you know, maybe terroir, the local like style. But we also have poaching RTDs.
Very good. Little and Green.
Ready to drink.
Yeah. So Little and Green, we are on the corner of Little and Green Street. So these again are a collaboration between Dave and
and
some
a
guys.
few other folk.
Yeah.
So I have the Sneaky Orchard. So this is Collins with apple, elderflower, and pear. Love all of those flavors.
I have a Hedgerow with blackberry, raspberry, and violet. Right?
Oh yeah, that's tasty. Oh, you still definitely get that infamous Irish cocktails.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, it's very refreshing.
Yeah,
I'd say
it is.
And again, it's like the Belfast coffee. It's a way of getting people to drink poaching. It's demystifying it. It's kind of taking the fear away from it, and it can only be a good thing.
Absolutely. So if you were ever on the fence about buying or trying poaching, just do it. You won't regret it.
So, Ro, I have something nice for you now.
Oh, yeah?
So we're going to go on to my favorite section of the podcast. Mix pyramid of snacks.
Can't wait.
Yeah. So let's see what we've got for you. So, Ro, welcome to Mix pyramid of snacks.
It's great to be here.
Yeah. So a dub. Jonathan Swift said it was a brave man first ate an oyster. So here we are. We've 4 oysters in front of us. I said I'd take the opportunity today to get oysters because, unfortunately, we said the budget didn't extend to champagne, but we'll have to carry on.
Leave that for the wrap party.
Yeah. So oysters, a mollusk.
Yeah, saltwater bivalve mollusk.
I used to have that car.
I only know a wee bit about oysters being from the Warren Point side of Carlingford Lough.
I mean, I guess you're from the oyster capital of the world, almost.
I reckon, yeah. Like Carlingford oysters are super famous. You see them everywhere around the world. I, as a kid growing up, we ate mussels because the oysters were worth more money to export.
Yeah,
so I hadn't had them until I was an adult living in London, I think, for the first time.
I saw them and you see them everywhere. London, I was in Thailand in March. They had Carlingford oysters, which is a bit of a tongue twister. But yeah, mollusks. So I guess Dublin is very much known for, seafood, all that kind of jazz. But I would think these are actually from Carlingford. So like you, they came down across the border and have landed in with us here today.
Carlingford, to be fair, is
it spraddles both.
Your side, yeah, but because the lock actually splits it. But as bar snacks go, this is quite a bougie bar snack. I like this. We're branching out. We're not just doing like snacks and corner shop,
potatoes and whatever.
We're going for some like baller cuisine.
Yeah, and I mean, this would not always have been a bougie snack. Similar to something like a lobster or whatever. They were quite cheap back in the day, and they're still quite cheap now. If you go to a fishmonger's, it's about 80 cents an oyster. Obviously, you'll pay substantially more if you're buying them in a restaurant or a bar or whatever. But yeah, they are a reasonably cheap food.
Yeah, and I think I'm so happy to see them. I think this is a bloody brilliant one for mixed pyramid of snacks. So will we just jump in? I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I like a bit of Tabasco on mine.
Okay.
And the thing about oysters, you'll either like that, you love them, I love them. If you don't like them, they just look like a big meaty snot. I think that's what people will tend to think.
I'm so glad you said that before I've had it. But some people like to put some gin in it after, wash down like a martini with an oyster.
They're so good.
You enjoyed that?
I love oysters.
I'll go in now.
Go on.
I'll go for just lemon.
Okay.
What's your favorite drink? How do you feel about black velvet with oysters?
I don't even know what black velvet is.
Black velvet is a champagne glass usually, or a stainless steel tumbler, and it's half champagne, half Guinness.
Right. How is that? I mean, while you're chewing on that was bad timing by you. But I do like to put a little bit of whiskey in mine sometimes. I remember I once overfilled it and nearly drowned myself with, I think it was Talisker at the time, because I was like, Talisker, tastes like the ocean. And then it was about a shot and a half in the oyster shell.
Well, just to let everyone know what they're thinking, I was there as well, and we did that together because we spend all our time together. Black velvet, when it comes to black velvet, so the half champagne, half Guinness combination, truth be told, I think it ruined both.
There are some drinks that are more than the sum of their parts, and there are some that are less.
Yeah, and when I go for oysters with people and they're like, oh, let's get a black velvet. You love champagne, you love Guinness. I don't love them together. You've ruined both. I'll have a pint of one and a bottle of the other. Thanks.
There we go. Cheers. So,
delicious.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're quite bougie.
We are.
So, in mixed pyramid of snacks,
yeah,
I'm going to put these straight in at the top. They are the best. Like, if you offered me these or a packet of crisps, there's only one winner for me.
Yeah. If there's a bar menu and it looks like a place that at least has seafood chilled.
Yeah. Because you don't want to eat bad seafood.
No. If half a dozen oysters are on the menu, or even an oyster or an oyster menu is there, I'm going for them every time.
Yeah. So maybe it's cheating. Let us know in the comments. I don't really care. Oysters, apex of the pyramid, straight in at number 1.
Love that.
So, Ro, here we are in Dublin on the north side, and Dublin is a famous drinking city. At the moment, there's about 850 pubs in the Dublin confines of Dublin. There was about 3,000 at one stage. 3,000, and then not including the likes of She Beans and Kip houses, or if you've ever heard the word Kip.
No.
Did you never hear somewhere called Kip?
No, I know. I've heard the term, this place is a Kip, but I've never heard, I actually don't know anything about that
It was basically a brothel. But it was a brothel in Dublin that sold drink as well. So it was a Kip house. Kip means to sleep as well. So if you're going for a Kip, so it all makes sense, doesn't it?
Somehow it does.
But so Dublin is a famous literary city as well. So you have the likes of James Joyce and Yeats and Beckett and all these kind of people, and the likes of Brendan Behan. But some of them were famous drinkers, and some of them had famous haunts that they used to go to. And so it's funny, it's hard to keep track of all of them. I mean, probably the most famous, are you familiar with Bloomsday?
Is it to do with flowers?
No. So it's Ulysses, which is James Joyce.
Yeah, okay, grand, yeah.
So every year, people basically relive the journey. They follow along Leopold Bloom, who is the main character of that book's tracks. But one of the places they go is Davy Byrne's pub.
Okay.
So Davy Byrne's just off Grafton Street, and famously, Leopold Bloom went in and ordered a gorgonzola cheese sandwich and a glass of Burgundy.
Oh, yeah.
Which, to be fair,
delicious.
yeah, sounds pretty good.
Yeah, I'll have it.
So yeah, that was one of the places James Joyce used to go. You have Patrick Kavanagh, who you're very familiar with.
Yeah, I do like Patrick Kavanagh, yeah.
So he used to drink in the Bailey down the road and was heard to be complaining about Ulster football and the demise of Ulster football. And nothing has really changed, has it?
No, and his best mate, as you have already mentioned, was Brendan Behan. Well, best mate, enemy, depends on what day you got the two of them.
Yeah, because Brendan Behan was famously, he liked a pint.
He did. Yeah, he did.
What was the saying? He He was a drinker with a writing problem.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah.
What was the other one about? He was in Canada, and they asked him, "How are you getting on in Canada, Brendan, Mr. Behan?" And he said, "I saw a sign that said drink Canada dry. I'm trying to anyway."
And he very much was that kind of like old school, quintessential Irish pint man.
Yeah,
You know.
and that was very much that is very much where that image of Ireland as drinkers comes from, is people like that.
And he wrote obviously Borstal Boy and some very, very famous pieces of text, but he was in and out of jail. And he was trouble as well. So it's not just like, oh, he liked a few pints. He also
He used to wreck the place.
Yeah, he did. He got convicted of crimes.
Yeah, he was in McDade's, I think, was one of his favourites. But if you look at the pubs around Dublin, there's about 8 pubs. They're like, oh yeah, Brendan Behan drank here. And I'm sure he probably did. But McDade's was the famous one, which again, just off Grafton Street. McDade's was the famous one that tended to attract most of that literary kind of crowd. And right until I think it was like the mid-60s, there was a bar manager there, a guy called William O'Brien. And the pub came up for sale. And he tried to buy it, and he was outbid by a British woman who wanted to own a literary pub, basically, because this was a famous thing back in the day that they all used to drink there. And so he didn't get it, but his mate bought Grogan's the same day. Grogan's, famous for a cheese toasty now. But he was offered the job to take over that bar, and basically the entire literary crowd, all the writers moved with him when he went. So she never actually got her literary pub. I don't feel that bad for her.
No, and she probably, or maybe she did, but didn't realize that they are a nightmare.
Yeah.
Think of all of the most famous drinkers in the world, historically, them and mixed with booze.
Yeah.
Not your best clients.
No. And I mean, you have the other pubs like Mulligan's on Poolbeg Street, the Palace, another one of our favourites. These pubs were all frequented by the great literary figures of the 50s, 60s, even earlier than that, 20s, 30s, 40s. And they were known as places where guys basically set up their office in these pubs and just would meet people and people come in. And I guess they were part of the furniture in these bars. They were local characters. But every bar has characters that don't necessarily become famous or get written down, I guess.
Yeah, these days you might make it onto someone's TikTok, but it's not the same as, everyone at a certain age. Even my dad didn't spend a lot of time in Dublin, but has a story about Patrick Kavanagh.
Yeah.
And I'm sure living in Dublin at the time, you would have had a story about probably all of them.
Yeah, and you kind of wonder who is that now? I don't know who that is now. Who have you ever gone on a night out with, and or someone's like, "Oh, did you see your man over there?"
Yeah, I don't know.
It's probably someone off Instagram.
What do you call who's your famous pint man?
Oh, Paddy Losty.
Paddy Losty.
Well, yeah, and Paddy Losty is of a crew of pintmen, right?
Yes.
So this was a great Dublin tradition of, you had these pintmen who would...
Well, okay, right, sorry, pintmen, right? And I'm going to, because we use this term, was it actually almost a thing? Like a badge of honor? Or did you...
Oh, yeah.
You had to be a certain, social class or profession?
Yeah, I mean, you didn't necessarily have to be, right? But the majority of Dublin's great pintmen were drawn from kind of 3 or 4 different job categories. Now, there was ones outside of these, but the Jarvies... You know what Jarvie is?
No.
So it's somebody who drives like a horse and cart. So if you ever go down to Killarney, do the Ring of Kerry, all those guys with the horse and stuff, they're Jarvies.
Right.
The Drovers.
The drive taxis?
They used to drive like sheep and cows from Dublin down through the city, down to the docks.
So they aren't shepherds?
No, because shepherds are in a field. But these guys literally just ran the herds down to the boat to ship out or whatever.
No way.
And then the dockers, obviously.
Yeah. Make shoes.
No story. But the dockers, no story of Dublin can be complete without the dockers. So these are the 3 professions that were particularly known for hard drinking.
I can understand.
Which you can understand. And it's back when we talk about stuff like early houses and these kind of things. These are professions that a lot of them tended to start early in the morning. Jarvies maybe not so much, but they used to set up their stations outside of the pubs so they could be nipping in and out during the day. So there is that great tradition. I don't know how great it is, but there is a massive tradition of these kind of things. And a lot of the stories around the Dublin drinking culture came from people like that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
There's a great one. So speaking of, Paddy Losty, who was, he drank 45 pints in about 2 hours, was the famous, and a packet of Crips then.
Yeah. No, he that that clip has, or that audio has went viral.
Yeah, that audio, it wasn't necessarily said by him. It was just an embodiment. It was kind of a caricature of the type of Dublin's great pintmen who would be known to drink more than 30 pints in a sitting. There was a guy down the road. There was a priest who used to work in Smithfield, and I think it was Father Kavanagh, but they used to call him Father Flash.
Father Flash, Pintman, used to sing pints quickly.
No, because he used to finish services in under 10 to 15 minutes.
Like a mass?
Yeah.
No
He
way.
did a mass in under 10 to 15 minutes, and he was known for drinking down, I think it was the Deer's Head down in Parnell Street, 10 to 15 minutes. So he only did 10 o'clock mass. By 10:30, he'd be in the pub, fully in his vestments, sinking half ones like.
Class. And he even gets wine in mass as well, you know.
he's only topping up as he goes along. But yeah, again, that's the kind of famous guys that are around. There's another great tradition which I found when I was kind of looking into this, called going bona fiding.
Okay, I haven't a clue.
Yeah, no, neither had I, right? So going bona fide. So there used to be a rule in Ireland up till about the 1960s where if you were a bona fide traveller, so this meant that if you travelled more than 3 miles from the place you'd slept the previous night, all right? Which, again, if you think about modes of transport way back in the day,
it would take
that would take ages. Whereas now it's like, it's 10 minutes, you know?
Yeah.
So going bona fide, and so if you travelled more than those 3 miles, pubs could serve you for longer. It didn't matter what the opening hours were. So particularly up around like Santry and places like that. So where I used to live, kind of out north Dublin, people used to travel up there after the pubs had closed in Dublin city centre and go on the lash out there, and it became famous. So they weren't meant to serve locals. But obviously they did as
Obviously,
well.
You're still open for the bona fiders.
Yeah, the bona fide. Yeah, so going bona fiding was a real thing. Like,
Class. Be like, where's the lock-in? I was like, no, lad, just get an Uber down to Rathmines.
I guess that probably would be it'd be a couple of miles anyway. But yeah, and those kind of things, like a lock-in, like all those kind of things you mentioned, she-beans, lock-ins, like they were a huge part of that Dublin culture. When you think about it, there's 850 pubs now. There was 3,000.
It's madness.
Yeah.
And the population was smaller as well.
The population was much smaller. But you can see where this unhealthy association with the Irish and alcohol really came from.
Yeah, and it is, and like on that side, like we have spoken about that like off camera before. It's like we by no means are like saying like, oh, absolute binge drinking is class, but we can't unlock the fact that it is just connected with.
It's intertwined. I mean,
it is
right beside the pub where we're in now. I don't know if I mentioned this already, but right beside the pub we're in now, there was a pub, and it wasn't. I found a line. It wasn't a brothel, but if you were looking for a prostitute, you'd find one there. So this was Dublin was an interesting place.
And like for those who don't know Dublin as a city, I suppose it is a capital city, but it's linked by a port. There's water access, and like there would have been so many different people from all around the world coming in, like flooding in, whether it's while the boats were port or docked or whatever, to go back on. So it's not unusual to hear that like a port city is debaucherous.
Yeah, is a bit ropey around the edges.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But those are famous writers. I always love the idea of like it does kind of give like a warm feeling to Dublin. Like I would love to do that.
Sitting down drinking pints with James Joyce.
Yeah.
WB8's not a fan of the pubs.
No.
The only pub he was ever in Dublin was apparently Toners. Went in, ordered a glass of sherry, and was like, "Nah, not for me." Just left.
No way.
Yeah, it wasn't for him.
I think
Not a famous pint man.
I think if I had the chance, I would choose a pub where Patrick Kavanagh and Brenton Behan were there on form, and maybe probably having a wee sing song.
Yeah, but I'd sit on the other side of the room probably.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah. So I think the message there is, when you're in a pub in Dublin, note your surroundings because there may be some characters around.
Yeah, and go and order a gorgonzola toasty and
a pint of Burgundy.
Absolutely. Here, I'll do that.
The Sam Allardyce.
Maybe we should actually do that route.
Yeah, I mean, see, Bloomsday is just kind of like St. Patrick's Day for people from the south side.
We don't like the south side.
Oh, we don't dislike it.
I don't really care.
Yeah. But look, that's the important message. Dublin, lots of history, lots of drinking, lots of crack.
Absolutely. Well, that brings an end to episode 6.
Yeah.
Episode 6. Huge thanks to Dave and all the crew from 1661 for speaking to us and letting us join.
Yeah, and to our crew, Dan, Dana, and Aaron. Thank you very much for all your help today.
Yeah, deadly. So subscribe. Just hit that button if you want to hear and see more wonderful things from Poor Decisions. And until next time, see you later.
Yeah, and just let us know, have you ever tasted poitin? Would you ever taste poitin? Yeah, signing off. Ciao for now.
Slán.